Hey everybody, and Tony here with the review of Bach's and MacMillan's The Passion, live from Manchester's Campfield Market, which I saw on the opera platform, and this performance was part of the Streetwise Opera in collaboration with the 16. The conductor was Harry Christophers and the director was Penny Woolcock. I stumbled upon this particular performance by complete chance when I heard that this was going to be live streamed on the opera platform. And I felt really excited to take a gander at this, and I was not disappointed whatsoever. This is essentially a compressed version of St. Matthew's Passion composed by Johann Sebastian Bach, with a few arrangements done by the Scottish composer James Macmillan. And as I stated before, I was not disappointed in the slightest, and it was just a very fine experience all throughout. Now, going into the production, it's not completely elaborate, but it has heart. It was a genuine and earnest production that did not need to hide behind a lot of fancy props nor fancy costumes, over elaborate scenery. It was just honest. And the fact that it took place in a market was something that was quite interesting, which also helped this certain intimacy that this performance had between the performers and the audience. And going to the costumes, I liked how they used a lot of the costumes used back in the olden times where Jesus lived. The only character who did not appear in costume was basically the evangelist, who appeared in a 20th century garb. So overall, the production was completely earnest in its execution without the need for elaborate scenery, and I found the lighting to be very well done. So I really have to give a huge amount of kudos to Penny Woolcock and her crew for making this production come alive. And now we get to the singers. Now, this particular version of St. Matthew's Passion didn't just have one Jesus, not two, not three, but it had a lot of several players who played Jesus. And those were Daryl Flanagan, Gavin Underhill, Musoshima Yongo, Anita Ferguson, Abigail Kitching, Ian Campbell, Chloe Buckley, and Jean Harmon. And I really liked their interpretations of who Jesus was like. I loved the dignity they were able to give to Jesus. I really loved the way they were able to embody him in their own special ways, and how they were able to give him a voice, whether he spoke or in this case sang or not. And when there were times they didn't sing, there were certain moments that I was quite mesmerized by each of their performances. When it comes to singing, I have to say that the biggest standout has to be Abigail Kitching, as she has a very pure soprano voice. It's really clearly toned, and it's really lovely throughout all the registers, and she really knew how to have a genuine presence when it comes to her voice. She's not a super high singer, nor was she completely wooden or tinny with her voice. It is a clear sounding, bell-like tone that she has when she sang the role of Jesus. Now, when it comes to acting, I have to say that Musoshima Yongo, Daryl Flanagan, Gavin Underhill, Anita Ferguson, Ian Campbell, Chloe Buckley, and Jean Harmon also did a very great job embodying the dignity and the compassion that Jesus had, especially when it comes to Musoshima Yongo's portrayal of Jesus. Now, when I heard her sing, especially with the case of Anita Ferguson, they were not really singers in the purest sense, because this particular production not only used professional singers, but also amateur singers or people who didn't really have a background in singing at all. While their musicality isn't really all there, it's the meticulousness that these other players had when it comes to playing Jesus, especially when it came to Daryl Flanagan's and Gavin Underhill's case. They were very meticulous on how they should embody Jesus, and it was just done in a very unique way. So I really have to give my kudos to all of these wonderful players who embodied Jesus in their own special way. Now, when it comes to the singer who had the most workload, I really have to give it to Joshua Ellicott's evangelist, for doing a superb job, thus showing a lot of endurance and just a lot of great musicality coming from this particular tenor. From what I've read about Joshua Ellicott, he specializes in a lot of the lyric tenor roles like Tamino, Nemorino, and a lot of other classic lyric tenor roles, whether they be from the Italian, French, or even that of the Mozart repertoire. He's mostly well known all throughout Europe, but I don't know if he's even sung at the Royal Opera House, because this is definitely a tenor who should be booked at the Royal Opera House, because he has one of the finest voices I have ever heard. He was able to really pinpoint certain phrases, and he was just a very meticulous musician with a very amazing voice and wonderful phrasing. It was just a very wonderful voice to listen to. It was pleasant, yet at the same time had a very strong presence. His portrayal of the evangelist was really, really superb. The same thing I could say about Jonathan Ainsco's portrayal of Peter, who had a marvelous sounding baritone voice, and his stage presence was really involving. He was able to make Peter a very emphatic character, but at the same time give him a sense of strength and just really make him a great character from beginning to end. But more than anything, his vocal assets were at their absolute prime. Then we go to the soloists, starting off with Kirsty Hopkins, soprano, who had a lovely, bell-like, and just simply put, lovely voice. This is a soprano who has no gimmicks whatsoever. She's not a super high singer, nor is she a super dramatic singer. She is, simply put, a natural, lovely, and a very gorgeous soprano whose voice was really, really lovely throughout all the registers, and she just had a very darling stage presence. Anna Pedley was also another superb soloist, and I also love her rendition of Erbarmedish, which was obviously sung in the English translation, much like the entire oratorio. She was able to really give that piece a great sense of nuance, clarity, and this is all thanks to her lush and pure lyric mezzo voice. I would really love to see this particular mezzo go places and have a more international career if she hasn't had that already, because she definitely has not only great potential, but she is a very meticulous and wonderful musician. Jeremy Budd's tenor soloist was absolutely amazing. He was able to sing all of his lines really, really well, but at the same time, he had a great amount of meticulousness and really pinpointing where he can phrase certain lines, and he was just a very fine tenor all throughout. Then Davies Bosso soloist was also another great standout. With his lush and plush bass baritone voice, he was able to sing his solo lines really, really well. Then we also have the pleasure of having a veteran basso, who I have not heard for quite some time, but I'm sure he's mostly been established in the United Kingdom, singing in a great amount of opera houses, David Owen-Lewis, who sang the role of the high priest Caiaphas. His voice is rather typical when it comes to listening to bassos past their prime, but despite that, he has a well-focused and really well-controlled voice, which still manages to sound quite fresh, and he just had a very powerful stage presence. I also have to give loads of kudos to Matt Reed's Judith for being a very great singing actor. Yes, he's not completely a singer, but the way he was able to embody this particular character was something so awe-inspiring. And I also have to give a great amount of kudos to all the members of the 16 for doing a job well done when it comes to their vocal performances. So overall, all of the singers were absolutely fine in their own special way. Whether some of them were not really singers to begin with or purely professionals, each and every one of them had something great to contribute. And the conducting done by Maestro Harry Christophers was very well done, really paying attention to how the singers, the extras, and all the members of the orchestra really paid close attention, and they were all in harmony. So overall, this was definitely a fine adaptation of Johann Sebastian Bach's St. Matthew's Passion, and I kind of like the fact that this was sung in English, not just because it's my native tongue, because I've been really accustomed to hearing oratorios, whether they be composed by Henry Purcell or Georg Friedrich Händel, in English, because it does sound really nice to my ears, at least in my opinion. And for those of you who saw this particular production of Bach's and MacMillan's The Passion, what did you think of it? Was there a singer who stood out to you so much? Did you feel like everything here just touched you in a very deep way? Or did you feel like there were certain elements that just didn't really hold up so well? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in later for my review of Verdi's Aida, live from the Met, well, basically the radio broadcast, starring Krasimira Stoyanova as Aida and Violeta Urmana as Amneris. So until then, have a great day, everybody, and an equally great Black Saturday. Take care, everybody.